go. The introduction to storytelling without words, leading up to our first online course in storytelling without words. And we've used these principles for workshops, used them for some training, but this is our first dedicated 4-session program in storytelling without words. So the structure of this course, and this is also what's going to be reflected in the little roller coaster ride I'm going to share with you here today. Just FYI, registration closes on April the 1st because a few days later, we're going to begin with the first part, and that is the non-linguistic story experience design. So that is without words, without written words, without spoken words, how we still add narrative to the experiences we design, to the stories that we tell. And then the next session is going to be about symbols and metaphors. As I mentioned, I'm struggling with this cough drop, so bear with me, if you will. And also how we can tell stories using symbols, and how we can use other things now that if we don't have the written word or the spoken word available. And we're going to move into space and into ourselves, and that's the sensory and the spatial narrative. On experience design, we've worked with more than 5 senses, and there are different ways that we can utilize that. And then everything is going to be wrapped up in engagement, immersion, and immersion without words, which basically is the same as saying attracting someone to the before, during, and after. So you can still have that full circle of an experience, even if you're not using one single written word. And there are different reasons why storytelling without words is essential, along as why a course in it is essential. So it provides versatility and accessibility. So for example, what are you going to do if you have 3 people speaking 3 different languages? If you have any reading impairment, anything like that, it can be very versatile and very accessible. And also, there's an emotional connection here as well, and a very special one at that, because we don't tell people what to feel, we share the emotional triggers with them. And then there's a level of engagement because of the use of all the expressions and the media that goes into this. When we talk about this story experience design, it's actually a combination of storytelling and experience design. What it is one thing is telling a story, another thing is working with how that story is experienced, another thing is working with how the story becomes part of an experience. So the convergence of those principles are referred to as story experience design. So when you hear that word coming up, it takes things a little beyond storytelling. Some non-spoken or non-lingual narratives. We have visual narratives where we present with images, paintings, films, graphic. It relies on the interpretation you do of what you see. We have musical narrative. Music can tell a story even without a single word. The same goes with sound design. And they evoke these emotional journeys. Some people say that music is like listening to emotions, and I can certainly see that. We have the experiential narratives, where is immersive experiences, interactive experiences, where you influence the narrative. But narrative is not necessarily something there's this outspoken narrative. It can simply be how the experience changes. It may be then addressed as words when people talk about it afterwards. Then we have our spatial narratives, which is when we have the space tell the story, or have the space support the story that we tell. We see that in physical architecture. We see that in exhibition design. If you do it very well, you're also capable of presenting even complex things simply through what happens in the room. So we need to remember, though, when we have storytelling without words, when we use non-linguistic languages, we use gestures as well. It's not like there's everything is universally understandable. So there are gestures and different things that means different things. So depending on where we are at, there are some universal things, but and there's also things like the V sign in the UK. If you do it like this, it means something completely different. And also so different kinds of signs and different kinds of ways of showing gestures means different things, and that is one of the important things as well. When we talk about these things, it becomes very sensible. What culture are we dealing with? So that leads into a little talk of symbols, about symbols. These are some of the symbols that we're working with: color, cultural symbols, physical features and big features, and the themes. And then there are shapes as well. So there are more symbols than that. And in the course, we're going to work with these symbols also, how to create your own symbols. And if you create your own symbols, again, it's not just from your point of view, it has to be from the point of view of the people and the visitors and the audiences you want to engage with. When we're working as story experience designers, we're working on multiple layers at the same time. So we might have an emotional narrative, we might have a technical narrative, we might have a spatial narrative, what happens in the space around us. All of those are really additions to the, what can we say, the traditional narrative, the story. The stories become so many different things when you have people moving around in the space. And so the story experience is a convergence of all those different things. So here we're talking about sensory and we're talking about space. But let's, for now, focus on the mindset of the sensory coding. So I was in this conversation today, actually, and I'm lucky because Hannah is here, and Hannah was part of that conversation as well. And this was, what makes a good story? Well, one of the things is that the good story continues, after the curtain closes, after you leave the park, after you close the book. And one can talk about that as coding of something that's memorable, something you want to relive, something you want to retell. So senses is actually something, sensory coding is actually using senses to make something stick with you or get you engaged with something. And just keep in mind that storytelling without words, as so many other things, is more than the sum of its parts. Once we combine these things, they become more. And so it becomes this powerful way of designing memorable, inclusive, accessible story experience designs. And sometimes you can have people talking completely different languages being able to experience the same thing, or you can have people who will experience what you're presenting them with in different applying different senses. So one thing is doing full sensory design, but another thing is also doing designs where you deliberately say, we know that we're going to have people that doesn't have the same level of this particular sense to navigate with or to experience with.